Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe Tuesday show, and we are going to be covering all of the events of what happened last week. I have all of the details of all 4 of the major attacks last week. We are going to walk through them because I think that by doing so, we're going to be able to recognize maybe some patterns, some interesting things to look at as we try to figure out what it could potentially mean for the future. Meanwhile, I am on my way to Jita for later, but just to get started. Okay, so overall, just top-level analysis. There have been 4 Dreadnought attacks between empires within the last week. Over the course of 8 days, there were 4 different strikes with a day in between each strike. The first strike was from Mimitar forces against the Amarian forces, or against the Amatar Mandate, which is part of the Amar. The second attack was the Galente on the Amar. The third attack was the Amar on the Mimitar. And the fourth attack was the Caldari on the Galente. So it was very clear that each attack, like from just a storytelling point of view, each attack was designed to kind of set up expectations for the next attack to subvert, right? Like we thought we knew what was happening, and then the second attack, brought some of that into question. And then as soon as we start forming a theory about the second attack, the third attack, happens to counter, the first 2 attacks are both against the Amar. So it's like, oh, well, maybe it's just the Amar being attacked. And then the third one is by the Amar. It's like, well, now what's going on? Who's doing this? And then the third one being Caldari to the Galente really throws into question a lot of the pieces. So let's break them all down, because I think that there's a lot more clues than just that. So first and foremost, the very first attack, and we're also going to talk about some of the background story of these characters or pieces as we go through them. And hold on, let me sip my coffee. Aeron Robotics, keeping freedom safe for all Federation from Intaki to Valor since for a long time now. Joint faction warfare. No. Okay, so as you can see, we've had a lot of these events. Each day that there was attacks, there's at least 3 different posts, and then I think on the days in between, there's 1. So we're going to start with the first day. Breaking news. Actually, this wasn't even the first event. Hold on. Okay, so it all starts with this post. In this post, we hear that there's a big outbreak because the Guristas have exposed. There's been a lot of terrorist attacks and a lot of unrest and protests and violent, stomp downs on protests in the state recently. So now the Guristas seem to be going for almost like a killing blow to show off footage of stuff about and kind of disrupting the mega corporations' control over their territories, especially particularly those within the PKN division of Caldari, which would be Lidai, CBD, and NOH. Keep an eye on that name. So this group right here represent the Forest faction, which these are the guys that made Jita 4.4's renovations, and they're the ones that did the Hypernet. But beyond that, we also see that the Empress is now back from her tour of the Amatar Mandate, which is important. And then this is interesting because this is going to be leading up into the future of the Triglavian plot, but that is not connected to these attacks at this time. Or I don't believe that these are connected to the attacks at this time. So we're going to actually skip over these. But down here, we see that there is more issues with the Black Dagger killings, which we'll talk about the Black Daggers in just a little while. But then we see that there is an assault on Innis Illich's Theology Council Law School by Bruter Vanguard mercenaries, that this attack reportedly kills some of the paladins defending it at the prison complex. And the prison complex now has the status of Khanid warlord Alor Chakaid, and slaver Orlan Zashev is now unknown where their locations are. And we have about 3.5 hours of videos on the YouTubes of me and Arcia breaking this down and talking about what this could potentially mean as they were happening, both the day that this happened and 2 days later. But one of the things that's important to note is that this is a separate attack by the Bruter Vanguard that happened just prior to the Dreads attacking. So then right after this happened, in Tanu, Tanu is very important for a couple of reasons. Tanu is the provincial capital of the Amatar Mandate. It is where the Empress was just touring. It is mostly controlled by Artichaper, and it is also the location of. It was the previous location of both this Khanid warlord and this slaver. They were both moved from Tanu 2 to this location in Innis Ilix in December. So, but their previous location was this Tanu system, and they were moved there after Flossiswin, the city that the warlord was in. Flossiswin was overrun, which we'll get to that in a little bit too. So this group was ran by the Bruter Vanguard. The Bruter Vanguard are a group of the Bruter tribe. They are a mercenary organization that comes from the Bruter tribe. And while they did not exist, so while they did exist and do operations prior to the Dust 514 stuff, they were one of the NPC factions of the Dust 514. I just realized I don't even have the kill mails for these things. So hold on one second. Z kill. Tanu. It's kind of easy to hunt these things down because it's like, hey, oh no, it's been over a week. Like, hey, what's your? Go, just look for the dreads. They kind of stand out in a lot of these systems. Although maybe not right now. Jeez, hold on. When was this? No, this is like way earlier.
If you're in the system, isn't it? If you go for top, you see the you can select on the more valuable kills, and that's how you can filter the dreadnoughts, because it is a high-tech system.
Yeah, well, that it says it's within the last 7 days, and this one is not within the last 7 days, so I may not be able to. Hold on. I just look up Bruter Vanguard.
That's the other option.
So first of all, you can see that Bruter Vanguard have the generic corporation logo, which is what you see with almost all of the Dust 514 corporations. And you also see that, like, while they were used a little bit in Faction Warfare and Flossiswin, prior to this, they were only used in Faction Warfare. And then in Tanu, you have a Vargur, who lights a high-sec authorized mobile sinusoidal beacon, and in comes 3 dreadnoughts, which this kind of establishes the pattern, okay? So a marauder of the empire that is attacking launches a high-sec authorized mobile sinusoidal beacon, which is a new item that was added into the game on last Tuesday, and out comes some number of dreads. In this case, it was 3 of that same faction. Then the dreads are supported by a NPC support fleet of the same faction, and are usually engaged by defense fleets that correspond to whatever is going on. Blair Go Rye, thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, Steve Online. So, like, in this case, what you would see is the Amatar Mandate guards, and I think some Amar Navy guards showed up to fight. But most of all, they were just killed by the players. In these things, each of them had, not each of them. In the first ones, not all of them had it, I guess. Hold on, let's look. So they had encrypted ship logs, encoded data transmissions, and Liberty Tattoo of the Minmatar Nation. Now, none of these 3 items were added in this patch. These are all items that have been in the game, and they're otherwise pretty non-remarkable items. The Liberty Tattoo of the Minmatar Nation does represent, created during the Minmatar Rebellion to honor those fighting the Amarians. First, it was only awarded posthumously to those who died heroic deaths during the rebellion. Today is often given to those who show great sacrifice and dedication to the Republic. So the idea that these dreads jumped in with no fuel to get home and these tattoo items with them, a lot of people saw this as like evidence that they were sacrificial, that this was the Bruter Vanguard, sending in their dudes in order to do this catastrophic attack or whatever, with knowing that they're not getting home. That was the original theory. So, and while the encoded data transmissions and encrypted ship logs have dropped from all of the dreads, like subsequently, and even the Marauders, I think, each race seems to be carrying around a different item that is equally inflammatory. So we're going to look at those as we go forward. So the Bruter Vanguard is destroyed. Cool. Nothing is really damaged except for some secondary stuff. There's a fishing village that gets burned. Of course there is. The next day, we get the aftermath from this, which is that effectively everybody's kind of holding for restraint. Everyone has denied connections to it. The Mimitar Republic, Bruter Vanguard, this is another pattern. So far, none of the attacks have had anyone claim any responsibility from any of them. All of the attacks have been caused by mercenary corporations that stem from either before or during the Dust 514 era, but was used in Dust 514 as an NPC corporation, Dust 514 being their original shooter that was on the PlayStation. In that, they developed a bunch of these NPC corps, and so those are the groups that are being used. They generally use these as these are the foot soldiers that have been operating in the lore all this time. A lot of these groups, like Bruter Vanguard, as I mentioned, was already used in the Flossiswin fights, I think about a year ago, when that was the thing that was happening. So, and then we see that the Amar, the Caldari state, are sending one of their main people to Amar to be physically in Amar as this is going on, and we'll see where that we'll get confirmation of that later. Where everybody is right now is actually kind of important. So, and then we see that President Celis Agard is announcing the efforts to make the Stargate to Solitude. This is a big piece of what we see in the next quadrant. President Celis Agard was elected last year to the Federation's president. She's now president of the Galente Federation. And she was elected in part on a platform of reconnecting Solitude to the remaining HiSec, or contiguous Galente network. Whether or not this means it's all HiSec or whether or not it's going to be partially LowSec, we're not sure, since LowSec is more about Concord than about the Empire. But the point of the matter is that this is what appears to be turning into a bigger thing in this quadrant, where there's 4 different Stargates that we are going to potentially be building, including this one and the one to Stain. But we'll talk about that some other time. And then, so this is something that happened that a lot of people didn't really pay attention to because it didn't involve a big dread. But in that day in between the first attack and the second attack, there was a significant strike by Red and Silver Hand Artichoper associated mercenaries. Artichoper is one of the Amar royal houses, and their family, one one of the previous Artichopers, had to cut off their own hand and have it replaced in a very Game of Thronesian kind of way. And so those loyal, they make references to that. So the Red and Silver Hand is a reference to that Artichoper family trait. And so they were conducting raids within the Mimitar Republic, but of course, just like everything else, it was denied. The connections to it were denied.
And I think this article, at least that section, also is the prelude to the Galente response. That did include dreadnoughts. You could see that the system they raided also had a Galente presence in there. And that served as... Oh, you missed that part. That's the part I was like, ooh, hello.
Yeah,
it's a defense with elements both from Republic Fleet and the Federation.
Got it. So this does fall. So this falls into the other pattern that we've seen emerge, which is that every single one of these places that are being hit are places that are super, super tense hot points. Also, Recon Cav coming in with his Prime subscription. Is this just not playing audio? Did I not hear it? What just happened? Hold on, let me see what happened. Nothing happened. Either way, Recon coming in with a resub. Thank you for that. Let's celebrate by showing us your clades! For those of you watching the videos afterwards, sorry. I'll keep that to a minimum. But I got excited. All right, so... and then you see here, we also see another Black Dagger killing. We also see the Guristas releasing financial records involving undisclosed payments to CBD, LIDI, and NOH, those same PKN group. And PKN is getting, the Caldari Business Tribunal is declining to comment on the claims that PKN overcharged for GG44. And there's Caldari Navy complaints about outrage of misdirection of funds from the Defense of State. So there's clearly something going on here, and the Guristas are really turning those screws involving this. And they have a history that we're not really going to dig into right this second that's leading into this. But we also see the Order of St. Tetramon, who are associated mostly originally with the Artichoper, but have had some connection with Sorum, especially after Jamil died, have now made a stronger connection to how Sorum have a new chapter being founded, which is important because they were key to the arrest or the capture and the holding of Chalkade and the slaver. All these moving pieces. But along with the Black Dagger killings, we see that another governor. So this is, at this point, when this is happening, I think the 7th significant Black Dagger killing in this chain. And this has started within the last couple of weeks. In the first episode, or in the first day, or in the first thing, it mentions that it is the 5. Brings the murders to 5 following 3 Carousel officers last week. So that's 3. So obviously 1 before last week. And then this one today, or Tuesday. And that brings up the count to 5. Which was yesterday, according to this. And then the next day, this explosion, brings up the killings pretty high from there. But there you go. And then we see Artichoper denying the units are under his control when it comes to the attacks currently going on by the Red and Silver Hand. Okay. This also, just to give a little bit of background, Amatar Mandate is really tense right now because the Amatar are actually Minmatar that were brought into the Amar Empire. And in 2009, Yanis Artichoper of the House Artichoper granted an Amatar person to be the governor of the Mandate. And then more recently, in 2019, that governor was then exalted to holder status, which has never happened before when it comes to Minmatar. It's basically he was turned into a noble, able to own land and slaves himself, which is thought unheard of prior to this by pure Amarians. And in fact, there was a big contest about this. There were big criticism about this. One prominent critic, Duke Alar Chalkade, which is that same warlord that we see, is one of the main people that talked smack about this and was really upset about the Amatar being given this kind of recognition. So, again, a lot of that stuff is all woven together, right? Which moves on to... so I think that covers the first day. Second day. This is not the second day. Galente Dreadnoughts. No, it would be... No, it was Galente Dreadnoughts second. Yeah, so the second day was Galente Dreadnoughts attacking in Dranipha. Dranipha is a big deal. The Dranipha Incident was an incident within the Galente Federation and Amar Empire within YC 95. So that's only 28 years ago. There was contest over the ownership of it. Eventually, it was left that the Amarr refused to negotiate with any besides the Quaife company, which is a bit weird. And in the end, the Amarr held sovereignty, but the Gallente had free rights to operate in the system as long as they basically gave a fiat to the Amarrian owners. So, but this system that was part of this conflict, and the main planet involved with it, was attacked by members of the Crux Special Task Group, which is a group that was made. This was actually prior to Dust 514, and this was part of the plot that led up to the Dust 514. Basically, a special task group was created because there was some archaeological find within the Crux constellation, which is the home constellation of Luminaire, the home of Gallente and the Caldari. And so the special task force was created in order to protect that area and was largely not used by CCP until this week, in which they attack Dranipha, or Dranipha. And in this case, they came with, let's look. Dranipha. This time they attacked with, I believe, 5 Moroses. The Kronos lit the Sino. The Crux Special Task Group actually have their own corporation logo because they had a plot that was tied into them before the Dust NPC corporations were added to the game. So they have a proper logo and history, although they don't have any. They have no mention in the world news outside of the fact that one of the top people in Upwell was a former member of the Crux Special Task Group. So otherwise, they haven't been really important, or at least not in the world news. The Dreads had the standard encrypted ship log and encoded data transmission, but also they had an encrypted data fragment, which I'm not sure if this is like. I'm pretty sure this is just cheeky in the fact that like the Gallente are kind of the most spy-y of all of them, but that was what was found in those dreads. It was also worth noting that by this point, I don't know if the first team were just super sacrificial or if there's a purpose behind it or if CCP figured it out, but they started bringing enough fuel to get home at this point. The red and silver hand. Oh, wait, no, that's the next one. So yeah, the Crux Special Task Force, as I said, the archaeological dig, and the Dranipha incident, we showed that. And then after the fact, there was a fragile piece holding. So, or was this, hold on. No, I brought this up for a different point. I think I brought this up just because the Silver Flame. I don't remember why I put this into this section. Whatever. Moving on. The third attack. So again, 2 days later. So this would now be Saturday by this point, because the first one was Tuesday. The second one was Thursday. The third one was Saturday. CCP Delegate Zero told us that there was going to be nothing happening on Friday. So we were like, woohoo. And then some people assumed that that meant nothing for the weekend. That was wrong. So around the same time as the other attacks, we now have the Amarr are attacking in Flossiswin. A couple things to note about this. The last 2 sites have been both high sec. This is low sec. So what that means is that this actually got taken care of a lot swifter than the other ones because super carriers were dropped. Ironically enough, it actually means that we do not have a kill mail for the Paladin that was used to light the beacon, because apparently the supers blapped the dread, and then no one thought to get the Paladin, and so it micro jump drived and then left the field, is the report that I've heard. So Flossiswin is important because it is the central point of the conflict of faction warfare within the last year or two. Ever since the Mimitar Amarian collusion, Sorum family really didn't like that, and so wanted to take back Flossiswin, and there's been tons and tons of fighting all over the place in order to, or on the planets and stuff like that, control of the planets. Lots of lore, lots of writing has been put into the world news over the last 2 years about what has been happening in Flossiswin, up to and including, up to and including sorry about that. The deployment of nuclear submarines, like nuclear warhead equipped submarines, by the Amar in the southern peninsula, which may come into factor in a few seconds. So, once the battle is over, once again, they focus a lot about the ground battle. In the other two sites, there was a little bit of stuff about the damage that the dreadnoughts did, but in this case, there seems to have been a major ground offensive as part of it. And the where is it? Reports of attempted landings are unconfirmed. Reports of launches from locations deep in the Southern Ocean are also unconfirmed. Long-range scans of Flossiswind 4 suggest high-yield detonations on the southern continent. So basically, all of the munitions, all of the stuff that's been stuck in or been in Flossiswind waiting for a catalyst. It is unclear whether or not this was like a coordinated attack or an opportunistic attack, but either way, the dreads attacking above has clearly triggered a return of violence on Flossiswind itself by both Bruter Vanguard and Silverhand or Shining Flame mercenaries. Shining Flame mercenaries are actually different than the Red and Silver Hand. Hold on. Which one actually did it? Yeah, it's so these are so the dreads were actually done by the Shining Flame in this case. Shining Flame are Sorum associated a mercenary group, and they're notable for a few reasons. Manifested. Thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole with Steve Online. So Shining Flame are interesting for a couple of reasons. One, they've been active in this Flossiswind conflict for like this whole time. Two, they were part of the Blood Raider world event. So hold on, let's see if I have it here. Yeah. So our exclusive source also reveals, quote, the Shining Flame mercenaries are proper mentalists. This is the one time they, what are they talking about here? Yeah. So this is as they're staging troops and all that stuff. The Shining Flame were one of the big groups that were being brought in, associated with the Order of Saint Tetramon. All of these same actors, but they were also part of the Blood Raiders group. Hold on. Yeah. I can't find it. Either way, so if you guys remember during the last Crimson Harvest, there you could either fight Blood Raiders or you could fight the other team, and the other team was Amar. That was Shining Flame. Those were the Shining Flame mercenaries were the people that we fought during the Crimson Harvest and like brought their corpses to the Blood Raiders. So they're a very active clone mercenary organization. Okay. So
this attack on Flossiswind, though, is notably different from the other three capital ship attacks. First is this was the only one that happened in Losec.
Yep.
And second, Flossiswind is a heavily embroidered faction warfare system that early already saw massive attention with the Amar side saying, okay, you know what, we're going to reclaim Flossiswind and its population, which basically results in enslavement. So that riled all the Mimitar up. So this attack could tie in with the others, or it could be a completely separate event tied to just the situation that changed in the faction warfare, including the system of Flossiswind. Right. That's an interesting one to keep in mind.
So in this case, they have slightly different items. They have the encrypted ship log, and I guess they don't have the other one, but they do have two. They have military intelligence reports and black daggers. But remember, we're doing black daggers here. Chakade threatened black daggers, and as soon as Shakade was moved out of Tanu, we start getting these black dagger killings. We've had now 7 or 6 significant black dagger killings, and I think there's even one more in the news that we skipped over. And then now we have black daggers here, along with the Tarot of Saint Jamil, which is kind of like a connection to fanatical militant philosophy, because the Sorum family are the most militant of the families. So again, lots of really questionable things being carried by these guys. But there seems to be a hint that this is a real conflict being brought up, right? That the Mimitar are in fact attacking the Amar and just not like saying anything about it. Maybe the Galente are helping in some, or got hired by some way, and then the Mar are counterattacking, but yet everyone's denying it. And that leads us to our final attack, which is on yesterday. In this, first of all, before the attack, this time we have a second non-in-space attack that happens just prior to it, and this one is significantly more important, I believe, than the jailbreak. Although I might eat my word on that, but so the chief executive panel is effectively the leadership group of the Caldari, and it consists of the 8 mega corporations CEOs, and they have a member that is the chairman. I don't believe he's actually one of the CEOs. He's just like, he's the officiator of the process, effectively, right? He's the de facto head of the heads, in a way. The closest thing that the president has or the Caldari have to some sort of president or leader. In fact, I believe that he's the guy that's on the Foundations image as the Caldari representative, which is interesting because as of yesterday, he may have been killed. So there was a large explosion at the CEP Spire. It was later, after the attack, reported that all of the big 8 more mega corporation CEOs are safe. However, the head of that chairman guy is still unknown. So we don't actually know what happened to him. We know that the Concord is attempting to do emergency summits, but with everybody being, with so many threats, they are having difficulty, bringing everybody together. As I mentioned, that Caldari leader, one of the CEOs, I believe, is currently with the Amarians in Amar Prime. So, it's a pretty tense state that we are at right now. And there's another piece that I missed, which is that hold on. At some point here, we had, I think, the second attack. Yeah. So after the second attack, when the Galente attacked the Amar said, screw this, and everybody went to wartime footing. At that same time, the Caldari went to wartime footing, and obviously the Mimitar went to wartime footing. That's when we start seeing those rats in space. So we've been seeing diamond rats associated with all 4 of these factions in space since this point. The Galente have so far not deployed their own troops, for the most part. Okay. This is taking a lot longer than I expected. Well, I don't know what I expected. So either way, so a group of, this time, 5 dreadnoughts, this time Phoenixes, coming through a beacon that was deployed by a golem, go into Tirjiv, which Tirjiv is on the boundary between the Caldari and Galente, and Tirjiv itself was part of a major conflict, right? So basically, the entire peace treaty between the Galente and the Caldari effectively hinged on Tirjiv, to the point where the treaty was known as the Treaty of Tirjiv. It's also worth noting that bringing this kind of peace and whatnot, which was, I believe, when Alexander Noir got his, the good grace and why he was so beloved by the people, and he was from Tirjiv, and eventually he was supposedly the one who attacked, or he's believed to be the one who attacked flew the supercarrier into the trade agreements, killing the then leader of Ishikone Corporation, among others, obviously. So, another, again, big tender point between these two different empires that get attacked. This time I can actually just go to my my kill board because I showed up to this one. And you were there too, Dutch. These guys had
I could have gotten one of the items, but I kept getting a fleet invite, so just as I was about to get one of the items that the NPCs are heavily after, it's like, no, you can't have it because you need to answer this fleet invite first, and by then the item was picked up by somebody else. I'm still salty about that.
Oldest trick in the book. Anyway, so these guys had Marines, which looks like they were maybe prepared to land on the planet. They had Galentian viral agents, which is weird. They had NOH signal operators and Nogahuvi rifles. Nogahuvi is NOH. So basically, this is a Nogahuvi boarding team with weapons and Marines.
It's a single Marine. So potentially on how you look at it, you could call it a suicide terrorist.
I believe that it's a unit of Marines because it's plural. But either way, this is one of the ways that they signify that there was a boarding party on the ship. But also these guys had Nogahuvi skins on, and they are from Expert Intervention, which is another dust group. Expert Intervention is the latest business launched under the NOH Mega Corporation's Expert brand, drawing upon the expertise of members of the NOH Internal Security Division to forge a military contracting company. Some may observe that this would account for the ruthlessness evident in Expert Intervention's operations to date, blah, blah, blah. They have also been largely outside of the active lore since Dust 514. But once again, they showed up and they were called out specifically in the that they have links to the Nogahuvi Mega Corporation. Another thing to note was that Tirjiv was a high-sec minor victory, Edencom minor victory, and so Edencom sent Aegis forces. So Edencom is a defense initiative. Edencom is New Eden Defense Commonwealth or Common Defense Initiative, and Edencom is led by Aegis. Aegis is a tactical unit of Concord that is basically tasked with dealing with Case Red Gamma, which is Triglavian Drifter threat, and Case Green Magic, which is basically a bunch of ships being hijacked in the southern shipping lanes in a couple of years ago. That was probably tied to all of this and eventually got folded in, and I don't actually know where that went, but I digress. So at the core of Edencom is Aegis. And Aegis is basically convinced all of the other empires to send their navies over to be kind of Aegis's combined military fleet, and thus Edencom is born. So if all of these tensions mean that the empires withdraw their forces out of Edencom, then all that's left is Aegis forces. But Aegis forces are Concord forces. So it is really interesting that Aegis forces were deployed in this particular fight, given the fact that Concord traditionally doesn't like to get involved in inter-empire conflict. So this seems to suggest that they're pretty much convinced at this point that this is not actions by the empires themselves, but by some other actor attempting to inflame these pain points. Okay. I know I haven't paid that much attention to chat so far, but I wanted to make sure to get through as much of this as I could. One thing I did want to show, actually, well, whatever. I think that about covers it. Did I miss anything else?
there's one important addition.
What's up?
Different investigations are being organized by the different empires, and even the love him to hate him uh, DED representative has thrown in his hat, where they basically say there's different representatives for the different four empires, and then there's Ovek Drost on behalf of the DED. Basically, say if any of the capsuleers, or in this case players, have intelligence or evidence that is tied in to these four attacks, they're asking them to hand them over to us. So people that have gotten those items or part of those items can make a choice. They could hand it over to a representative of a empire. So they could say, I'll go to the Amar or Minotaur or Galantir or Koldari. Or they could say, you know what, I don't, for whatever reason, I don't want to go pick a side. I'll hand them over to the DED.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's fun to be had if you got your hand on one of those items that dropped.
So this is a good point. I'm really glad that you brought this up, and I don't have it ready for me right now. But on the forums, there was basically a post that's like, "Hey, I got the encrypted data. You know, what do we do with this?" And again, as I pointed out, this is not like a new item. It's just a copy of that item. But CCP can, in theory, track where it goes and how it, this particular encrypted data. But to players, like if somebody contracted you, you wouldn't be able to tell whether or not it was the authentic one from the actual site.
The funny story about that, the person who made that post, he mentioned it on the Arc Discord, and I quickly told him, like, yeah, no, don't underestimate what you have, because people told him, like, hey, dude, that's worthless. It's just a random item you can get anywhere. Look, it's nothing special. And then I came in with, well, actually,
yeah,
this is what you could do. Like, this was one of the options I told him. Like, hey, you could throw it up and see what happens. And after that, well, he decided to make his post in the way he did, and that got the ball rolling. So don't
yeah.
underestimate what you have, even if it seems like a generic item that you got from an event like this.
Right. So just to drill this home, on the forums, someone posted in the in-character forums, which is a place where things happen, by the way. This guy said, "Hey, I have this. Who wants it?" In character, and basically representatives from each of the four factions said, "I want it," in a way that was very reminiscent of, like the T3 destroyer, give it to me, don't give it to me, and whoever you give it to will make it, decide, who gets to make the next step or whatever. But while I don't know the location of most of the encrypted data, and obviously it's very difficult to track it as a player because it's too easy to spoof players with these kinds of things. From my understanding, the one that we do know about was contracted to the Minotaur leader. So worth knowing, I guess. Maybe part of my goal of making this video and putting it up is so that way we can come back to this video after the fact and pull out as much information about what happened as possible.
It's really interesting when people say that the lore doesn't matter or it doesn't provide content. Picking this up and deciding on who you're going to give it to could mean that if one representative gets the majority of the information, like they might not get the full picture, but they could be the first to get enough information to draw the conclusion and follow up on that. Or alternatively, if it has information that puts them in a not so shiny position, they could decide to just stay quiet about it and muffle it away. So things like this is where you have player actions matter and they help develop the story. Either they could go to the quote unquote right side and the reason is found out, like who's behind it, what is happening, or they could do it to the quote unquote wrong side and it turns out that they did have a role to play in that and they decide to stay quiet upon it. So lore-based events, it's live and it's interesting, and we help shape the story.
Absolutely. I'm trying to find the other NPCs posts. I found Thon Gatarao or whatever, this Galente dude. Let's see if he. Nope. So where's my good friend Ovig?
That would be in the post with about these Bruter ship logs.
Okay, let me find it real quick.
It's about halfway, message 41 of 89.
Yeah, here we go. So the Bruter ship logs is, of course, the first ones that showed up. And you get now this guy asking for the tribes, this guy asking for DED. And Ovig Dursk, Head of Sorrow, is Angry Concord guy, for those of you who don't know. So he is the guy who's like telling you not to go into ghost sites in that trailer, and he's just generally a giant douchebag.